panelists, I'm going to call on folks. Recording is now in progress. I'm going to call on folks and have them quickly share their name, their pronouns, the organization they're dialing in from before we start to get into the program. So since you're at the top left for me, Bruce, I'm coming to you first. Oh, you're muted. We just need you to unmute.
How's that?
Perfect.
Oh, so sorry. Obviously, I wasn't listening to all those helpful tips. Sorry.
You were demonstrating. I actually paid Bruce to do that.
Very good. Yeah, I am Bruce Cusick. He, him are my pronouns. I'm a board member with Triangle Connection and former co-president of that organization. That organization's in Lake County. I consider us a sister group of the Rainbow Group. I'm right now in Hagerstown, Maryland, visiting our grandson.
Amazing. Well, we're so glad you can join us all the way from Maryland. I have a feeling the weather is nice and pleasant there. I'm crossing my fingers for you. Good.
Yes.
And you said you're visiting family, which is even better. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Great to be with you. Jordanos, I'm coming to you next.
Thanks so much, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jordanos. I use she, her pronouns, and I currently live in St. Pete. And I'm the Deputy Field Director at Equality Florida. So Equality Florida is the largest nonprofit organization securing LGBTQ rights here in the state of Florida statewide. And really excited to see all of you today, work with voter or volunteer mobilization, our programs, and also federal projects, specifically the Equality Act. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'll go ahead and pass it back to Brandon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, Treva, I'm coming to you.
I'm next, and my name is Treva, last name Robert,
thank you.
she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from the Villages, and tonight I'm representing the Rainbow family and friends. However, I do have a secondary hat. I already work with a lot of voters, and I'm very much an activist these days, which is why Peggy asked me to stand up for the club. And I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about this very important issue with you all tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Treva. We are very, very excited to have you here as well. Caitlin, who is a late addition to our squad today, I'm coming to you now.
Hi, y'all. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Caitlin. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Senior Manager of Policy and Outreach at Freedom for All Americans. I'm based in Denver, so a little bit further from y'all, but really excited to be here. Freedom for All Americans is the bipartisan campaign working to win comprehensive nationwide LGBT non-discrimination protections. So really excited to chat with y'all today about those and the Equality Act, because as Braden said, Florida is super, super important, which means y'all are super, super important. So Brandon, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. And I think you had every one of us at y'all. You're now fully a part of the family. Peggy, certainly last but not least at all, we're coming to you. Oh, and we just need unmute for you as well.
How's that? Better?
Perfect. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. My name is Peggy Garvin, pronouns she, her. I'm in the Villages, Florida. I am president of the local PFLAG chapter here. Our chapter is named PFLAG Lady Lake, but we cover Marion, Lake, and Sumter counties. And we deal with mostly here grandparents of kids who are gay or trans or whatever, and they come to our meetings. We're a support group. We meet once a month by Zoom right now, and we're happy to be here tonight.
Well, we're so grateful to have you. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention for folks, I am the media relations manager for Equality Florida, so a peer of Jordanos. And I'm also going to introduce you to my other peer, Salvatore, a little bit later in the program. I did want to give a special shout out to the organizations who've created time and space to be here with everyone tonight. You know, that is SAGE, that is Freedom for All Americans, Equality Florida, Rainbow Family and Friends, of course, PFLAG. This is the way we get the work done, through coalition, through partnership, working together as a community. I am always inspired, and certainly my own personal life has been touched time and time again when LGBTQ organizations and folks come together to lift all boats. So I'm grateful for every single one of you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I want to check in with you, Emma, first, because I know that our run of show had potentially a video from Pat and Paulette, and I just want to see if we have that. Are we going with that? Or I'm happy to go to Caitlin first.
Yeah, we're going to start off. So we have a few videos from Sage constituents from around the country, just coming in talking about what, why the Equality Act is so important, why we need to take action around it, kind of what it means to them. So we have a nice video from Pat and Paulette, and I'll just share my screen, and hopefully that will work. And then we'll kind of hear to keep us really grounded in the folks that that this is going to, affect, and the people that we're working with. To get this done. So let me know if you've got sound. Give me a thumbs up.
It's really quiet. I think I can faintly hear them.
Is it better?
No, I'm still, anybody else? Maybe it's me, my sound.
Is it still very quiet? Interesting. Okay, let me try this.
I don't hear it at all.
Okay, my volume is all the way up, so let's try that again.
Okay.
On the video settings, do you have it there to share audio? Because that's under the share screen.
Yeah, that's the odd part, is that, let's see, audio settings. And I checked it all up before.
So Emma, when you go to share your screen, there should be a button, like a checkbox to click to share your sound.
The weird thing is that I did do that, but let me just do it again.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, while you do that, I just want to say thank you for highlighting the lived experiences and personal stories of folks who will be impacted by non-discrimination protections. It means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the real thanks goes to these folks who took time out of their day. And that's right. These Pat and Paulette are rock stars. They actually met through Sage. So they've got a beautiful love story. Okay.
Oh, I love that.
Give me a thumbs up if it's better.
Hi, I am Paulette Martin, and I'm Pat.
Good.
Member Sage, Paulette and I have been fortunate enough to connect with some wonderful members of the LGBTQ plus community. Some of whom have been fighting for the equality for over 50 years. Even though there has been progress over the years, there's still plenty of work to do. And what in half of the states in the U.S., it is technically illegal to deny someone a job or housing because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. There are no federal protections against refusing someone service or access to public spaces just because of who they are and who they love. Every day, trans elders are turned away as a doctor. Couples are harassed in their long-term care communities, and there's little they can do to stop it. As elders, we want to know that our rights are protected in key areas of our life, like going to the doctor and finding somewhere to live. Freedom and equality are fundamental American values. Yet too many members of our community relying on state protections. This is not enough. We need Congress to pass the Equality Act. The Equality Act will not only provide much needed legal protection for LGBTQ elders, it will also update existing protections for people of color. Like anyone else, Paulette and I, along with our senior community, deserve the right to be our authentic selves and have legal protections from discrimination under federal law. Make sure to contact your senators and encourage them to pass the Equality Act because LGBTQ elders have waited long enough.
Okay, so sorry about all of those audio issues. What I'm going to do is try to fix that for the next video. Very glad that we had subtitles. We're going to send the recording around later too, so if people didn't catch all of the subtitles, we'll at least have a chance to watch Pat and Paulette's video once more. And I'll hand it off back to Brandon and do some troubleshooting.
Thank you so much. And for me, audio issues, whatever, the message was loud and clear from Pat and Paulette. I really like that we closed on the message of people have waited long enough. People have waited long enough to be treated the same as anyone else. And that certainly is all LGBTQ folks have been asking for, is just to be treated like everyone else. So thank you again for highlighting those voices. And I know we've got some more videos down the road from constituents who are passionate about this issue. But I want to bring in our first expert to talk to us really from a 35,000-foot lens about the Equality Act, give us some background here, and talk to us about sort of where we fit into that frame. So Caitlin, I'm really excited to have you. I'm really grateful that you're able to join us all the way from Denver. And I know you've got that Freedom for All Americans lens, so you know the work happening in each and every one of the states. I wonder if you can start by giving us a little background on the Equality Act itself. What is it, and why is it so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Equality Act is a piece of federal legislation. It is a bill that would provide comprehensive LGBT non-discrimination protections. And what we mean when we say comprehensive is that it covers, it protects from discrimination in employment, in housing and seeking housing, in federally funded programs, credit, and public accommodations. And public accommodations is generally any place where we can reasonably expect to be served, like a taxi or a store. So the Equality Act has passed the House for a second year in a row, which is great. It had a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing earlier this year, which did not have a vote, which was totally expected. So right now it's in the Senate, in the federal Senate, and we are waiting on a vote. Now, the Senate requires 60 out of 100 senators vote yes on the Equality Act for it to pass and then go to the president to be signed. The president is fully supportive of the Equality Act, and so that's great. We're really, really working hard to get all senators and get to that magic 60 and hopefully well above 60 senators supporting the Equality Act. Now, the Equality Act is super important because we need protections from discrimination. As we just heard in this video, this is something that we've been working on for decades, that folks in our communities have been experiencing discrimination, fired from jobs, denied promotions, turned away from housing or kicked out of housing when landlords find out that they are part of the LGBT community. There are so many stories, and you may have some of your own. We know that at least 1 in 3 LGBT people in the country experience some form of discrimination each year. So this is unfortunately all too common. And at least 28 states are currently without protections. So it's super important for these states that we fully pass federal protections and also to codify the protections that we do have across the country to get those passed. So a couple things that I really wanted to highlight too for the Equality Act. With housing in particular, long-term care is something that eventually we or our loved ones are very likely to need. And we know that nearly half of LGBTQ people who entered a long-term care facility or had a loved one enter long-term care, that nearly half of those folks experienced mistreatment in a care facility, which can include discrimination. So it's really particularly important for folks accessing long-term care. Federally funded programs would also be protected. Federally funded programs includes things like Meals on Wheels, right? So these are areas that are really critically important to folks who use these programs, and that folks that use those programs feel safe, feel protected, and feel that they can live as their true, authentic selves. It's really something that's important for folks that are thinking about saving for retirement, right? We don't want to worry about being turned over or turned away for promotions or raises or really steady employment as we work to save for retirement and live with dignity after retirement and have those options available to us. So this is really critical for particularly folks that are thinking about all those things, which is really all of us at some point in time. So something else that I want to talk about really quickly, the Equality Act also expands public accommodation protections for all protected classes. So religion, sex, and race and ethnicity. Right now, in the Civil Rights Act, public accommodations is pretty narrow. Language is fairly outdated and uses things like lunch counters. So what the Equality Act would do is it would provide updated protections for all protected classes. Like I said earlier, in things like businesses and taxis and pretty much anywhere we can reasonably expect to be served, somewhere that's open to the public. So that is also a really great benefit to the Equality Act. Right now, like I said, we need 60 votes in the Senate for this to pass, and that's what we're really working towards. We could get a vote here really pretty soon, and maybe in the next few months even. So what we need is we have to get 60 senators supportive, and that includes our 2 senators here in Florida. So we need to work really hard to make sure that our senators here are hearing that this is a critical issue to Floridians and that we're wanting them to support this issue really, really, really quickly here. So that's something I know we will be talking a lot about. Brandon, is there anything else that you wanted me to go over or chat through?
Yeah, you know, I first of all, I thank you for sort of naming some of the things that are really tangible to people, right? That we can put the Equality Act in perspective with. You know, I'm a renter right now, and I've rented my entire life. I'm hoping to buy a home in the next 6 months or so. But I've been a renter my entire life, and I know that there have been moments where I've sort of code switched the gender identity of my partner in an effort not to be clocked as someone in the LGBTQ community, because I was concerned that I might miss out on an opportunity. I had a landlord who didn't seem to be all that friendly toward LGBTQ people. So I really appreciate you sort of putting it in tangible terms. And I appreciate you, Emma, jumping in to remind people, if you've got questions that come up, pop them into the chat. We are gonna open those up later in the program. So definitely take those notes as you go along, or pop them into the chat so that we can refer back to them. And I appreciate, Caitlin, that you talked about the path forward. And I wonder, you know, I know we're gonna get to, Jordanos is gonna talk a little bit more about Senators Rubio and Scott, but from a national perspective, how important do you see Florida's senators in the landscape of the Equality Act passing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you alluded to this earlier in the call, and that Florida is always playing a key role when it comes to policy, when it comes to national politics. It's a state that other folks look to, right, to be leading on these issues, and certainly to the senators in the state to be leading on these issues. So we know that having the Florida senators supportive is really going to help us in other states as well, as we try to get that math right. Who are going to be the 10 Republicans, hopefully more, that are going to vote yes, and we've got 2 right here. So you know, that's 20% of the way there, as we're hoping.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. It is, you know I saw the word jaded popping up in the chat. I feel that acutely. I do work with the Florida State Legislature all the time, and I know my peers will agree that it's easy to become a little jaded when you're deep inside the work and you're watching the dysfunction. But the truth is that, you know, the path forward is fairly clear. It's fairly clear how we get to where we need to go, and everything is impossible until it's possible, right? I didn't think that I would see the headline that I saw today, which is the United States Senate passing a bipartisan infrastructure package that is really, really big, and passing with, I think, 69 votes in the Senate, which means a significant chunk of Republicans supporting it as well. So as I mentioned, everything is impossible until it's possible, and the path forward seems to be fairly clear. And as you said, Senators Rubio and Scott are a big part of that.
Absolutely. And I also think it's really important for folks to know that this really is possible. I know that this feels really hard for folks, that it's been a long time, like I said, that we've been really working on this, but we really feel we're getting the feedback when we're talking with senators and folks that we have a path forward here. We do think that this is absolutely possible, and really relatively soon. So I know that it feels tough, but we just have to be really consistent and motivated as we talk to our senators and make sure that they know that we're motivated, and they should be too.
Well, I appreciate that so much. And we appreciate you and the team at Freedom for All Americans. If you, I know folks on the call are feeling frustrated about the state of Florida politics. I can't even imagine trying to do these things on a national scale, on a federal level. So we're just so appreciative of your organization and you personally for quarterbacking these efforts across the country, for working in a bipartisan fashion, to get things over the finish line that are not only popular, they're the right things to do. Treating people with dignity and respect is the right thing to do, and you are helping us get there. So thank you so much, Caitlin. And I know we're going to get back to you with some questions as we round out the program later, But now I want to turn it back to Emma. I'm going to cross my fingers, knock on wood. We have another constituent video, this time from Barbara, and I am really, really excited to hear from her.
Yeah, and fingers crossed, I've changed my audio. We'll see if it works.
It's going to
we
work.
also have a
I
backup.
believe it.
I'm going to be optimistic. Okay.
Everything is
Clicking.
impossible until it's possible, Emma.
Exactly. Okay. Let me just make sure that I can actually see you all so that I can see if you're going to tell me that it's not going to work. Okay. Give me a thumbs up.
You know, the Equality Act will do one of the things that is a big problem for most of us, and that's the fact that while we may have great protections in our own localities, if we cross the city lines or the state lines, those protections go away. Op-ed that I wrote for USA Today was published on Monday as the lead-in to their LGBT Pride week on the opinion page. And I talk about Minnesota, which was the model state for LGBT protections, and you know that's been around for nearly 30 years, and that's the kind of protections that we need across this country, so that when I come to another city for a conference, so I don't have to worry about the fact that what I was able to do in Minnesota, I'm not able to do in the city I'm visiting. So the Equality Act still is the number one issue that we have to address within our community to be sure that we and a variety of other people that need protections that are included in the Equality Act need for full and respectful lives.
Okay. So I'm hearing that it was, you know, not great, but okay, it was okay. So we're gonna go to our other backup. So next time we hear from another person, we'll use someone else's audio since my computer doesn't like me today. But I'll pass it back to Brandon.
Well, you know what? We're making progress. And that seems to be the theme of tonight's conversation is how do we make progress together? And so I am really excited, Peggy, to talk to you about the progress that we can make together. And specifically because of your work with PFLAG. And, you know, I, just from a very personal space, I had a really rough go of it coming out when I was a kid and, you know, didn't have the adult support that I so desperately needed to thrive at a young age. I really needed, you know, parents, I really needed teachers and administrators to be there for someone like me. And so it fills my heart with joy to see the work that you and others at PFLAG are doing to provide that kind of support for LGBTQ young people. So thank you so much for doing that. And I'm really excited to hear your perspective on this, on why it's important for you to come on to speak out in support of the Equality Act.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Can you hear me? I think I unmuted.
Yes, you sound great.
At PFLAG, like I was saying before, we generally have grandparents. Sometimes we'll have parents from local schools, and we stress to them that their child is the same person. Continue to love them the way they are, support them the way they are. What we don't tell them is that the equality for that child is going to change in our society if we don't get this bill passed. And we really need to get this bill passed on the grassroots level by us actually contacting our two senators and telling them we vote. And that's what they're interested in, is getting our vote. So on the PFLAG level, I've also worked with Equality Florida, and we've done in-school services in Marion County for the teachers and administrators, which was really very helpful because they really just don't know how to address different things in the LGBTQ population for kids. And normally the school is the safest place for kids because when they go home, their daddy doesn't like it that they're going to be queer or trans or any of that stuff. So mostly the mothers will support them, but we have trouble with the dads. And so that's why PFLAG is so important. And I'm happy to continue the work here with PFLAG.
That's great. And, you know, I think why your perspective, well, first of all, your perspective is valued and wonderful always. But I feel like in this context, I'm really intrigued by the work that you do to help enlighten folks. You know, I know that conversations with my own dad have been very challenging throughout my life. And it's hard to bring them on that educational journey about, you know, things that they may not understand. So I wonder your thoughts on how the educational component about equality and the work that we have left to do around equality fit into all of this? How important is it that we educate people about the disparities that exist today?
Well, I think it's imperative that we do that with everyone, and including the kids themselves and their parents. We offer an awful lot of educational materials, and of course, the internet is full of stuff for them to access. But unless we get equality for everyone, I mean, it's our constitutional right. It's in the Constitution. We just haven't made law out of it. And unfortunately, in Florida, you can be fired for just being gay or just being different. It's not a right to work state. And so that's one of the things that I bring up with the parents, that they should be cognizant of that and coach their kids along those lines.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that stood out to me from Barbara's video is this idea of a different set of rules depending on where you are at any given time, right? I leave the state of Florida and I go to a conference in Atlanta and the rules are different. My equality looks different. The way that I'm treated looks different. And I think that can be very hard for people to understand if they've never experienced it fully. So again, it's, you know, the work that you're doing to educate not just young people and kids, but also their parents, their grandparents, their teachers, or administrators, to understand just how folks are going to navigate the world is so critical. And I know you talked about, you know, reaching out to senators and things like that. I wonder if you spend a lot of time in the community. I wonder if you have thoughts on the important role that allies will play in the fight to get the Equality Act over the finish line.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, most of the neighbors here I live in the Villages, and most everybody, there's someone in their family who is LGBTQ. It's not like we're different, you know, they know people. And so when you talk to them and ask them about, you know, I don't have the same rights that you do, they'll go, you don't? I'll say, no, but we need your support to help vote the Equal Rights Amendment in. And when it comes up, and also give a call to Scott or give a call to Rubio. Just talk to their office and tell them you're for it and you vote, and help us out here a little bit.
Yeah, you know, anytime we've won in this fight, it's been alongside our allies, and it's been when we've told our stories. And you know, I think that's why I'm so proud to do the work that I do every day, because anytime we face adversity, anytime we're up against a wall, when we share our stories authentically, when we live our out and proud selves, and when we ask our allies to join the fight, we've won. And I believe that that's possible this time around. So thank you for cultivating those relationships. Thank you for educating and inspiring, for your patience with people. I know I have a very limited amount of patience these days, so we need folks like you with infinite amounts of patience. And I'm really, really glad that you could be here to share some wisdom with us. I know we're going to get some questions at the end as well, so we'll hear some more from you, Peggy, but thank you. Glad that you're here.
Thank you.
With that, I want to turn over to Treva, and we're going to keep the conversation going a bit about, you know, the Equality Act and the role that all of us plays. And Treva, you and this organization have been mobilizing in the Villages for a long time, and you do really, really important work around educating the population. So I wonder if you can talk to us, you know, on a personal level and an organizational level, what the Equality Act means to you.
Well, the easier part, I think, to talk about is the personal level. And the parts of the Equality Act that are really meaningful to me are the work protections part. As a retired person, it doesn't matter so much now, but I still, at my age, even though I'm retired in the Villages, I still have a number of friends that are still working. I know a lot of teachers who are very closeted in various parts of the country because they're afraid that they'll lose their job, or they're working for a Catholic school and they'll lose their job. And so it's very important to me to pass this kind of legislation so that they don't have to be afraid of that anymore. And part of that goes back to when I was 19 years old. I had joined the Army because I needed money to pay for college. And so I needed to do everything they needed me to do so that I could stay in school, get my degree, and get on to a better life. And I was 1 year into the program, 1 year into college. I was the top cadet in my university. And I got warned by the sergeant major that I was going to get called onto the carpet of the colonel's office and get confronted. And the sergeant major said to me, I don't care if you're gay or you're not. I don't care who you are because you're a good soldier. So I want to warn you so that if you've got anything you need to think about beforehand, that you can talk to this man who has no idea who you are, and tell him exactly what he needs to hear so that you can continue to serve your country, because you're going to be a tremendous soldier. So it hit me at 19 years old that it wasn't going to be okay to be who I was, and I needed to alter my pronouns completely. I needed to divide my life into what I was when I was a soldier and what I was when I wasn't a soldier. And so it goes back that far for me. And so I think now about my cousin's daughter who's gay, and she's in her early 20s and she's just starting out in life. And I would sure love to let her live an open life where she could be exactly who she is, regardless of who her partner is or how her life turns out. So that part of the legislation is extremely important to me. And then on a personal level, there's a piece of the legislation that I was talking to a friend about recently about the public spaces and public places, and how somebody could be turned away for having dinner because they're holding their significant other's hand, or they give a nice chaste kiss on their anniversary. I'm about to have a 31-year anniversary with my partner and now wife, and I don't want to be chased out of a restaurant simply because I'm doing something that somebody else can do. And my friend said, oh, well, they should have the right to allow whoever it is that and whatever behaviors they want. I said, do you think they would chase a straight person out of the restaurant if they held their spouse's hand? And she goes, gosh, I never thought about it that way. And when you were talking to Peggy about allies, about our friends, a lot of our straight friends don't have a clue that that could happen to us. They just don't think it's possible. And I think here in the villages, especially because of the time of life that we're in, we're not working in jobs. We have a lot more freedom to be open in who we are. But this is the time that we should contact our friends, our straight neighbors, our allies, and anybody around the country that can call their senators and say, you know what, this is time. It's time to pass this. And a lot of those people are Republican. A lot of them are non-party people. And a lot of them are Democratic. And we need somebody to call from every spectrum, because one call to your senator makes an enormous difference. Because you represent so many people that'll never pick up the phone. And if you don't want to talk to somebody, email them. You don't have to have a face-to-face, but get out there, get involved, because you can actually make a difference. And I found that out recently, just being more and more involved, how much telling one story to just another person can activate that person and their network. And so it's like the old shampoo commercials that everybody on here will remember, except you young folks. And she told two friends, and they'll tell two friends, and suddenly your whole screen is filled up like a Zoom call with people that are using this shampoo. So you guys remember that just one other person will make a difference, because it makes it all go forward.
You're absolutely right. And I really appreciate that you called out the need for people from different walks of life to speak out about the very basic things that we need as LGBTQ people. I mentioned the slide that came across earlier. 75% of Floridians support non-discrimination protections for the LGBTQ community. And I want to be really clear about what that number is, because polling can be a little tricky. We know, we've seen over the last 5 years how polling can be a little tricky. But this poll was done in two different ways. It first said, the name of the bill, would you support a bill named this, Equality Act? And then it broke it down and he said, well, would you support a bill that codified non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people in all these different places? And the numbers didn't change. It wasn't as if the poll itself was worded in a way that made people comfortable with the idea. It was that when you straight up asked people, do you support treating LGBTQ people with dignity and respect? 75% of Floridians said, yeah, I can get behind that. And that means, baked into that 75% is not just one party, not just one kind of person, not just one lived experience, but really people from all walks of life. And to your point, it matters when those people pick up the phone. It matters when someone in the Villages picks up the phone and calls Senator Rick Scott's office and says, yeah, I do vote 100% of the time. And let me tell you what would make me more confident in voting for you is if you supported equality for my neighbors. So I really love that you called that out. And I wonder if, from an organizational standpoint, if you can talk a little bit about the work that Rainbow Family and Friends is doing right now to help mobilize some of those voices.
Well, the Rainbow Family and Friends really provides a platform for the seniors that are here that know that this is a very Republican area, but it's a very welcoming area because that's an expectation. I go back to other places around the country and I talk to my friends and I go, oh, you're the one that had the guy that said the blah, blah, blah when he was riding his golf cart in the last election. I'm like, you know what?
I know exactly who you're talking about too.
Right? You've seen it. It was on national news. He is a minority. And so the people in the club are involved in so many projects, have helped out kids, have helped out their community. And I think that gives the club a basis of credibility that says, you know what, we do a lot for the community. We're not asking you now to take a look at how our laws are written and help us change that so that equality is for everyone, that freedom really is free, that Americans can be proud of who they are and what they stand for, not just here, but around the world. And so that somebody in Mississippi can keep their job, whether or not they have a significant other in their life or not, that they don't have to worry about finding a new place to live because their landlord just found out that they're gay.
Yeah, that is perfectly stated. I couldn't have said it any better myself. And I love that that you and the organization and all of the work is really grounded in showing up for our communities. Because again, you know, I go back to this idea that we win when we live authentically and share our stories, when people know who we are, when we're not just other, when we're not just LGBTQ, we're their neighbor, we're their doctor, we're their family, we're their friend, right? It all comes into clearer perspective for them when we're asking to be treated with dignity and respect. So showing up in the community, showing out for who we are, telling our stories, and then asking for our allies to get in the fight with us, for me, that's the recipe right there. And I just so appreciate that you're doing it. And I want to say from a very personal space, thank you for sharing your story. It is hard to share our stories, especially when they can sometimes come with painful memories. But again, that is how we change hearts and minds. So just really appreciate you. And I'm so glad to share space with you. Again, we're going to have questions at the end. So I'm excited to hear more. Of course, yeah.
To the folks that live in the Villages area. The Villages and the surrounding areas vote at a very high rate. Lake County alone voted at 80%. So when you are from Sumter and Lake and Marion counties and the surrounding areas and you call and they record where your address is from, they know it's a very active and involved population. Your voice might even count for more than other places in the country. So keep that in mind when you think about, am I going to step up and say something?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'm like underlining that virtually because trust me when I tell you that my parents live in Portland, Oregon, and they're not shocked when I tell them that people in downtown Orlando are angry about something or calling to support the Equality Act. But when I tell them that my friends in the Villages are showing up, they listen. They know just how important you are and the impact that you have. So thank you so much, Trevor. Great to spend some time with you and share space with you. And we'll be back to you for questions later on.
Thank you.
And now I want to turn it over to my other friend, Bruce here. I'm really excited, Bruce, to hear from you as well. And I think keeping it on the theme of stories and personal impact, and I know you've talked about visiting family, and so I know family is very important to you. I wonder if you can talk about what the Equality Act means to you and how it would impact you. Oh, and just, we need you to unmute really quick.
Okay, how about there?
Perfect.
All right. Thank you. And I am going to talk about family. Specifically today, I'm going to talk about the younger and the older. And let me just get straight to the point here. Without the Equality Act passed and into law, I feel like we're at great danger. The long-term benefits and protections we have fought for so hard for so long, I really feel without this in law, we are one election away. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we
Okay.
lost your video.
I'm gonna go back. Sorry.
That's
I'm on
okay. You were
Wi-Fi
taking
right
us
now.
to church. I'm ready.
Yes. Well, let me go back. We are one election away from losing more rights. Now, I'm going to admit something. I was totally naive a few years ago that what we worked for was permanent and could not be reversed. But with the last administration, and nearly on day one, they began to chip away at transgender people. Our transgender sisters and brothers were the first people they began to target. They saw them as low-hanging fruit and easy prey, and they went after them. And they went after them hard. They went after them in the beginning about the military. Now let's just think about the military. Them not being able to be part of the military, that would reduce their health benefits. That's what they were really going after, trans health benefits. In addition, without the military benefits, they're taking away education. You know, I have I'm here in Hagerstown, Maryland. My grandchild is 60 miles away in West Virginia. Just go west and you would go to a very conservative county, even in West Virginia. My husband and I are probably the only gay or LGBTQ plus people our grandchild will have in his life. He lives in a very straight, very cis community. He will probably not know any other LGBT people but us. And that state's going to do nothing. Florida, we got to carry the West Virginias, the Alabamas, the Mississippis. We got to pull them through. We've got to make sure this happens. I also want to talk a little bit about the elderly, because my heart goes out to the folks that are much older than most of us here on this call. My mom's 89 years old. She lives in a very nice retirement, independent living community just south of Jacksonville. My mom knows just about everybody's name in there. When I call her, she tells me what Frances did last week and about Georgette coloring her hair, and I hear all about Helen. But when I go see my mom, I see these two ladies that are always together, and they're scared. They're probably in their mid-80s living in this facility with my mom. And I said to my mom recently, Mom, those two ladies that were sitting out waiting for transportation when we came back into the building, what are their names? My mom has no idea. My mom has no idea why about their names, because these two ladies are living in this facility and trying to be invisible. And I have gaydar. I know they're lesbian. They have gaydar. They know I'm gay. And I look over across the room at them and they pretty much say to me, yes, we see you. Leave us alone. Do not out us. That's what this is, year 2021. And these two ladies are living in a facility where they pay big money to live there, and they don't want to be outed. We don't have what we need. This will push us over that line. And I'm so glad that we've got so many organizations on this call, because we've got to be united. United we stand. That's the only way we're gonna make this work. So all of us, I'm hoping tonight, we all reach out. I'm hoping we not only just get the folks that aren't on the call today to reach out tomorrow, but our allies. I'm hoping we share these telephone numbers. It can't stop with us tonight. We've got to get the word out to call these senators. Thank you.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. And you're right. You know, it's heartbreaking for me to hear the stories of people who are scared to be themselves, to be out. They're scared of what they might lose, the people in their life they might lose, the security of housing and other things that they might lose. And I appreciate you calling out, calling out the attacks on transgender people from the last administration, right? And it is real. I mean, you know, you said, oh, I thought these things, you know, were going to be solid, they were going to be permanent, they were going to be protected. But the truth is that we have to continue the push because opponents to equality don't sleep. They don't go anywhere, and they certainly continue to try to win elections. I don't have to tell folks on the call that Florida is in a very unique position in terms of politics right now. We're watching the culture wars explode in every single corner of the state. And that's why it's so important that, as you said, we band together, not just as a community, but also bring our allies, to call another person, to bring a friend, to continue to fight for the equality and the protections that the LGBTQ community so deserves. So thank you, Bruce. We really appreciate you. I appreciate your passion and your perspective. Again, we're going to have questions coming up shortly, and I'm really excited to be sharing space with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe we're going to go Jessica back up on the video. We have a video from Nancy. I'm crossing my fingers. I know it's going to work. I feel it. Nothing yet.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that the audio should be on to share.
Okay. We're not getting audio on the video.
No audio, okay. One moment. Oh, okay. Try one more time.
All right.
Greetings, fellow Floridians.
Yes.
I'm so sorry that I couldn't be with you today in person at the Villages. I hope you're well, staying safe, and we'll all be together again very soon. I've spent my lifetime in public service, here in this country and abroad, in support of causes that address disparities. At Susan G. Komen and now at the Promise Fund of Florida, I'm advocating in support of causes and at-risk populations that remain under threat of unequal treatment and disparities in healthcare. But I wanted to take a minute to speak with you about another equality issue, just as important and very personal to me and my family, and that's non-discrimination protections for LGBT people. As a Republican, I believe in the power of opportunity and freedom, the opportunity to thrive and achieve success and live a life of individual liberty. These are central tenets of conservatism, and they build stronger American families, communities, and a nation. As you likely know, there are many states across the country without explicit laws protecting LGBT elders from discrimination. I know many of you have lived in these states before. You have friends, children, and grandchildren living in them right now. This reality has to change, and that's why we must encourage our U.S. senators to pass the Equality Act. This important legislation would update federal civil rights law to explicitly protect people from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity in key areas of life. Without the Equality Act, LGBT older people will also remain at the risk of being evicted from places like the Villages or denied access to health care and federally funded services. We can all agree your zip code and who you love shouldn't determine your access to employment or housing, not here in the country we love. I'm so proud of the work you're doing to right this fundamental wrong in our nation. Thank you for your service, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person very soon.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Just the right message. And I appreciate, once again, the bipartisan work to get this over the finish line, because equality, dignity, and respect, those are simply American values. And I know we can all agree to that. So with that, I would like to bring in a peer of mine, a colleague that I work with frequently. I'm really excited to see you, Jordanos. I wish we could be in person. I'm sending you a virtual hug. But it's wonderful to see you and spend time with you. And I'm really excited to get your perspective as we sort of narrow in on Florida Florida is an interesting place, and we've done a lot of work to get where we are today, and we're going to play a critical role, as we've talked about a lot tonight, in what happens next. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about where we stand in terms of statewide protections, and then talk to us about our favorites, Rubio and Scott. Where do we stand there? How are things looking?
Thanks so much, Brandon, for the introduction. It's great seeing you, and wanted to say thank you for everyone on our Zoom call, taking time out of your day to come to our event. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the background context on where we are with protections here in Florida. So in case you didn't know, I just wanted to update you all on a huge victory that we had earlier this year in February. So in the first few weeks of February, the Florida Commission on Human Relations had a ruling to add sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes, specifically for housing, employment, as well as public accommodations in those protections. And so we really want to claim this victory because of all of the hard work in the past decade and plus years that both state and local activists on the ground have fought for statewide protections here in Florida to make sure that all LGBTQ people in Florida are protected. But I also want to acknowledge why we still need the Equality Act, because the Equality Act is able to fill critical gaps that state law just does not have jurisdiction. And so I think Caitlin mentioned this earlier, that federal law can cover a lot more expansive areas of life like education, jury service, credit. So if you're taking out a loan or something like that throughout the country, that the Equality Act would be able to cover that our state law might not be able to cover. And we also want to acknowledge other states that don't have these protections, especially in the South, like in places like Mississippi, et cetera. And we want to make sure that all LGBTQ people across the country, no matter what state they live in, are protected. So that's why we're voting and passing and advocating for the Equality Act here in Florida. And we know that both of the senators play a pivotal role in that. And so I wanted to talk about a little bit of the role that we've been doing these past 3 years. So we've been working with coalitions, both with national partners and state partners, to work on a campaign in the past couple of years to push both of the senators as well as representatives here in Florida. And so what we've been doing is creating tactics like doing meeting requests with their offices. We've been really successful this year. We've had more meetings this year than any other year in the last 3 years with the senators' offices. So that was a huge success with our coalition. And so meeting with these senators' offices, one is to do an education, right? Because a lot of people are misinformed on what the Equality Act does and also why it's still important. And so some of the staffers were kind of surprised on how expansive it was, how explicit and how comprehensive these protections were, and didn't realize that it was still needed here in the US. And then two, I think, Brandon, you put up a lot, is about storytelling. This is a huge moment where we can really share our stories. And we've had other panelists show some compelling stories as well, so they can hear the sides of the constituents here in Florida on why we want this to pass. And so the responses that we have been getting from some of the offices for both Senator Scott and Senator Rubio is a lot of compassion from the staffers, a lot of understanding. They're able to ask questions that we can provide answers to. And so that has been really helpful in order to get those stories told and across any stories of discrimination and any stories of fear that people are having here in Florida as well. And so some of the other tactics that we've also been doing is working with Freedom for All Americans on our business letter that was just launched the end of July, about 3 weeks ago. And so we were able to get over 20 large businesses, some of them such as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl champions, even though I don't follow sports. And I live in St. Pete, so have some proximity to Tampa there. But we were able to get over 20 large businesses and corporations to sign on a letter to call on Senator Rubio and Senator Scott to push for the Equality Act. And that's huge because we know that these senators really are interested in the economy and how LGBTQ people affect the economy and how the economy affects us, et cetera. And so we know that having business leaders in the state of Florida calling on them and creating that letter is a huge influence. And so those are some of the work that we have been doing here in Florida with our coalition partners, as well as media campaigns and asking our digital supporters and our memberships to do emailings and to call both of the senators. And we're actually going to also ask our audience here that came to our event today to see for them to do a call to action as well. So we're excited to pivot to that.
I love it. Thank you. And yes, you're giving a little sneak peek to what's coming up next on the program. But just want to give a special shout out to you and the team. You really laid out, again, sort of the comprehensive approach that we're taking to getting the Equality Act over the finish line. It would be so easy for us. Listen, I'm in this camp. I tune in. I've got my MSNBC, my Rachel Maddow on in the background most evenings. And I know that it would be easy to just wash my hands of the state of Florida and say, I just can't do it anymore. It's too stressful. It's never going to happen. But again, everything is impossible until it's possible. And the only way we get there is by doing the work that you and others are doing, by doing the work we're going to ask everyone on the call to do, and that is to challenge our lawmakers to show up for us. I know that people thought that marriage equality was impossible until it was possible. I know that people thought, in the moment that the Stonewall moment happened in history, people thought it would be impossible that LGBTQ people could be accepted into this society in the way that we are in many ways today, until it was possible. And so this is another example of when we come together, when we do the hard work, the heavy lifting, when we stay relentless, when we share our stories, truly anything is possible. So thank you to you and the team. Thank you for giving us perspective on the statewide protections and on the need to continue to push our Senators Rubio and Scott. And thank you for helping me lay the groundwork for the next part of our discussion tonight, and that is how everyone can get involved. So to do that, I want to welcome my good friend Salvatore, who is going to share a quick presentation. I know all of you are dying. We've got Gail already putting phone numbers in the chat. I love to see that. I know people are dialing right now, already making phone calls, trying to see who's on the other line. But Sal, I'm hopeful that you can give us the roadmap to success. What can folks do moving forward to help get the Equality Act over the finish line?
Yes, thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone again for being here with us. This is such important work. My name is Salvatore Vieira. I use he, him as pronouns. I am the Central Florida Field Organizer with Equality Florida. And I am going to give you a crash course on making calls for equality. Now, I really wanted to focus and make sure that I gave you all the tools to be able to do this, to make calls to your elected officials whenever. There's always going to be moments when you find something passionate that you're passionate about and that you need to take a stance and help make change. And so I really wanted to make sure that you had the tools to be able to do that, not just with something like the Equality Act, but maybe there's some other legislation down the road. So I'm going to present, make sure y'all can see my screen. Can I get it? Awesome, cool. So there are a few things that we should be aware of when we're making calls. We definitely need to prepare. You can totally call your elected official and just wing it, but it's always best if we prepare. We know what the bill that we're talking about, and all every piece of information that we need to have a really effective call to our senators. So you want to know your congressperson or senator phone number. You can typically find this by Googling. You can go to the direct Senate or House of Representatives website to find this information. You're going to want to make sure you got your name, city, and zip code. Make sure you relay that in your phone call, whether if it's in a conversation or leaving a voicemail. You want to know the bill number and the name. So we've got the Equality Act, and knowing what specifically the bill number is, that can be very helpful when calling your elected officials. Your story. We've seen a lot of folks share their stories this evening. And so if there's a personal reason you'd like to share as to why you either support or oppose a specific legislation, I encourage you to share that, because like all of my colleagues and have been saying over the night, is that the thing that's really going to change minds is by sharing our story. And then our talking points. Make sure we know some talking points that are available to avoid any discrepancy and keep your message clear. So we're going to plan and prepare together, because we are going to make some calls tonight. So the bill name and number, we are calling about the Equality Act. the bill that we've been talking about all evening. The bill number is S393, and we are going to make sure that we ask for our senators' support for this bill. Of course, you know, I would hope that you know your name, your city, and your zip code. So we're going to skip that and go straight to your story. It's always important to think about your story. It's important moving forward with any sort of fight that you're going to come head on against. And so it's always good to think about, why do you think the senator should support this bill? What about your life experience pushes you to make this call? So I urge y'all to take a moment to really think about, before you make this call, is there a specific experience that you've had in your life that is important for the Equality Act to pass? Is there someone in your life who's been affected by discrimination because of who they love? So feel free to really think about that and share that in your message. And then, of course, talking points. Talking points you can always find if I like to Google whatever the bill is, and look to see what articles have been written about it. A lot of the organizations that are out here, like Equality Florida, PFLAG, and some of the other bigger, maybe more national organizations, have a lot of readily information for us that we can access. So a lot of this was hit on tonight. I'm not going to go back over it again, but just very briefly, the fact that LGBTQ Americans still lack explicit comprehensive protections from discrimination, and we saw this was in 28 states. So having talking points is always very important. And just for the essence of time, we have put together a nice script for y'all. So we've got the senators' phone numbers right there ready for you. And then we have a script that you can use to guide your conversation or message for your senator. Typically after hours, you'll only be able to leave a voicemail. So this is typically a pretty easy first go at calling our senators. So it's very easy. Hello, my name is Salvatore. I live in Altamont Springs, 32701, and I'm calling Senator Scott to urgently ask you to pass the Equality Act. The Equality Act provides explicit and comprehensive non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ Americans that are lacking in federal law. And then there's a moment, add your personal story if you'd like. I live my life proudly as an out gay male, and I know that my life will be drastically improved if the Equality Act were to be implemented and become the law of the land. So, whatever your personal story is, feel free to add that in. And then please vote to pass the Equality Act so that all LGBTQ people across the country can be protected. Thank you very much. So I'm going to leave this up. Let me check the time. I think we're still good. So I'm going to leave this up. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to take this moment and call both Senator Rick Scott and Senator Marco Rubio and ask them to support the Equality Act. Feel free to use this script. If you don't want to use this script exactly, I always like to say scripts are there as guidance. Definitely use it for all of the key points that you need, but make it feel like yourself. You're the one leaving this message. And then of course, add that personal story if you've got it. So I'll go ahead and leave the next, we'll say 5 or 6 minutes to allow y'all to pick up the phone. I'm actually gonna do it right now with y'all. And hey, I've done it before, but that doesn't mean you can't call. You can call every day if you want. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, we'll give it just another minute. Let y'all finish up your phone calls and voicemails. And then I can wrap things up and pass it on back. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Just taking that one step it really truly brings us just that much closer to securing non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people. So please urge your friends, urge your family. I forget who said it earlier in the panel, but it's you know, word of mouth. Word of mouth is one of the best ways to get this movement going. Your friend having their friends call, and then their friends having all of their friends call. By the time you've told one person, 50 other people will know and will have called. So please, please, please urge your friends and family to do this work. And like I said, this is something you can do for many issues. For any issue, your elected officials are there to serve you. So always know that you have the right to make your voice heard. And this is one of those ways that you can do that. I know we're on a tight schedule and we're going to save questions for the end. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on back to Brandon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sal. It is always such a pleasure to join you for a day of action and a moment of action. And if you're like me and maybe making phone calls makes you a little nervous, you might not believe me if you're on the call right now, but I'm actually inherently a very introverted person. So getting on the phone, I'm like introverted plus millennial, which means when my phone rings, I almost throw it across the room because I don't know what to do with it. But there's something powerful about getting together and making phone calls and being in the same virtual room with one another. So my encouragement is, if it makes you nervous to think about picking up the phone and dialing and going through the script, get together. If you're like me, you can have a glass of wine while you do it. You can make it a whole event. It's really nice. It feels good to be doing this as a community. So thank you, Sal, for doing that for us and encouraging us all to make a couple of phone calls tonight. And as Sal mentioned, we are going to take some questions. So I'm going to transition that over now. I'm going to bring the panel back on stage with me so that we can get our experts on the record for some of your questions. If you have a question, you can pop it into the chat. And I'll ask Emma if you see some direct messages, if you can sort of feed those questions over to me. I know I saw a couple of questions, and I think I'm going to ask you, Caitlin, to weigh in first and then sort of open it up to the panel from there. And I know I saw Aaron, thank you, catching things as well. The first question that I saw is around protections in the Equality Act. Let me scroll and see if I can find the question again. The question was specifically if the Equality Act would protect trans people using the bathroom, for instance, in schools. Is that a part of the public accommodations piece? What does that look like?
Yeah, so this is a great question. It actually kind of goes into a couple different pieces of the Equality Act. So I will chat really quickly about both of them. Public restrooms, locker rooms that are in businesses, public places are certainly covered. That is discrimination that would be protected, and trans folks would be protected from discrimination in relation to bathrooms in public places, businesses, again, anywhere they could reasonably expect to be served. Now, schools gets a little complicated. We have to deal with private versus public schools, and public schools are generally overseen by Title IX, and Title IX isn't really affected by the Equality Act. However, what I do want to say is that this is an issue that's really consistently been determined on our side in the courts. So we've had folks that have been discriminated against in schools in their bathroom access and gone to court, and they win, right? So this is an issue that we're seeing really positive progress on, and certainly passing the Equality Act still helps us, right, as we move towards not allowing discrimination anywhere. So we think that this is a covered issue. We think that discrimination in schools and bathrooms is already covered and protected. And in public places, bathroom use is absolutely one of the places where discrimination is not allowed. Private places is a little bit different, right? So places like churches and things like that, if it's a private location, that is not an area that we would necessarily see protections like bathrooms, but public areas for sure.
I appreciate that. And, one of the other things I want to highlight, because by trade, I am a storyteller and I help LGBTQ people tell their stories. And it is a powerful story to tell when we have the law on our side. It is really hard once you've given people protections and equality and rights that are equal to others. It's really hard to go back and unwind those and take them away. And it is a very powerful, compelling social story to tell, to say, we won federal non-discrimination protections, so that when we go out and win these or fight these court battles and continue to try to move the meter on public opinion, we've done so in a really powerful and impactful way. So for me, as a storytelling component, to be able to say we won a battle like that is really critical and important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the second question that I saw in here, and I'm going to invite our panelists, if you feel compelled, if the spirit moves you and you've got something you want to share, please do jump in. But I think maybe Jordanos, I'll pass this one to you first. And you've been doing the work with Senators Rubio and Scott. You've been meeting with their offices. And I mentioned we're all maybe a little bit jaded. The question is there a chance that they come around to supporting the Equality Act?
Yeah, well, I do definitely want to say that there is a chance. And what we have seen is that a lot of the staffers are very compassionate whenever we do these meetings. And so that's why it's something we have been stressing is having these storytellers, and not just storytellers from constituents in these regional offices, but specific communities like faith communities. It's really important to have faith leaders show that their church or their synagogue, etc., accepts LGBTQ people and that it doesn't conflict with their faith. It's important to have business leaders in these meetings, which we have done before, that talk about economic impacts. And so what we try to do is to have a variety of voices that are in these meetings to share those stories. And we also know that elected officials are held accountable to their constituents, especially what we see with Senator Rubio is up for re-election. And we know that he's watching that race very tightly. And as you said earlier, 75% of Floridians support non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people. So I do think that that is something he is considering as he's running for re-election, and that's something that we should hold all of our elected officials accountable towards.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective. And I have some personal background with Marco Rubio, as in his last election, our paths sort of crossed politically. And so I know him to be nothing if not interested in remaining in his seat. And I think, if he understands the broad swath of constituencies that support LGBTQ people, that's certainly something he would consider in his re-election bid. Absolutely. Okay, I'll pivot to this next question. And again, if folks, feel passionate and are experts on the subject, please weigh in. The question is from Linda, and it's centering on, one of the first things we always hear in contrast to LGBTQ protections, which is religious liberty. Linda says one of the principal opponents is the Catholic Church and the USCCB, as the Equality Act would exempt itself from RFRA. How do we respond to the issue of the Equality Act superseding religious liberty arguments by those, such as those espoused by the Catholic Church and other religious organizations?
So I want to start this by saying it really, in pretty limited circumstances, actually supersedes anything when it comes to religious protections. We know that this is not an issue of like religious groups versus LGBT folks, right? So many of the LGBT community is religious. Many folks who identify as people of faith are LGBT or have family and friends who are. So I think this is really important to frame this issue as really not this like win-lose situation that some folks might think it is. Right, the Equality Act does not stop or inhibit in any way churches and religions, people of faith in their places of worship, and practicing their faith. right? This does not inhibit folks in practicing their faith. This doesn't stop Catholic schools or private schools from hiring teachers that are part of their faith. And that does not change when the Equality Act passes. The places where this would change, where we would see an update, is if a religious organization is providing a public service. So food banks, shelters are pretty common examples, and Catholic Charities is one of those big ones, right? The thing is, these charities, these organizations are operating just fine in states that have protections. Catholic Charities operates in a lot of the states that have statewide LGBT protections like Florida. So that's a really important point to share when folks are concerned about religious organizations. And if a shelter or a service provided by a church or a place of worship, religious organization, does not want to serve members of the LGBT community, they actually have options. So they can only be open to members of their religion, and they are allowed, if they are a private then service, to turn away folks that they don't believe are in line with their religious beliefs. So it tends to be a little bit confusing around RFRA and things like that. I think the most important thing to know is that if a religious organization or anyone is providing a public service, that service would be and should be open to members of the LGBT community. But if it's private, if it's within a place of worship, if it's a private service, it pretty rarely is going to affect those spaces.
Yeah, I really appreciate the context there. And I think it's a question that comes up very frequently. So I would encourage folks, if you have additional questions around there, you know, I would encourage you to reach out to the folks who are here on the panel to get additional information, more talking points. I'm seeing here in the, sorry, I'm like trying to do the chat and the time, and I've got my schedule here. I'm seeing in the chat now from Emma that many LGBTQ older folks also rely on faith-based institutions. So think about retirement communities that are run by faith-based organizations, et cetera. 82.5% of retirement communities is what I'm being shared with are religiously affiliated. So again, to your point, Caitlin, it really is about any time those spaces are open to the public, they have a responsibility to protect the public from discrimination in those spaces. And I think that's the really critical thing. I see some additional questions, but I'm getting a little bit of a time check. So I'm gonna ask if our panelists feel comfortable, if there are questions that folks wanna follow up to directly. If you wanna put your contact information into the chat, I would say feel free and welcome to do that. And Bruce, I know you had something that you wanted to plug here before we go, so I wonder if this is the space to do that.
Yeah. So on the Triangle Connection, that's Triangle Connection, 2 words, Facebook page around 9 o'clock tomorrow, we will publish some of the screens that we've used tonight, like the story screen, the telephone numbers, etc. So look for that on the Triangle Connection page tomorrow about 9 o'clock. And then please, if you're on Facebook, share that on your page and ask people to share. Then we can get this out to people that weren't even planning on coming or don't know anything about this organization or this call tonight. So thank you for doing that. Look for Triangle Connection. And this was not a commercial for Triangle Connection. It's a commercial for this initiative.
You want us all to like and subscribe to Triangle?
Well, if you want to like and follow us, I'm not going to say you can't.
Good. I like that. Yes. I'm encouraging everyone to follow. And yes, please check out Triangle Connection. Thank you for sharing those resources for folks so they can continue to get engaged with the community. I want to thank all of our panelists for spending time with me tonight. It's wonderful to see your faces, even if just tiny Zoom screens. I am so hopeful that we get to see each other in person and have real hugs sometime in the next century would be great. But for now, it is really nice to see all of you on the Zoom screen. Thank you for your expertise, your passion, your work, for challenging us all to do more. Thank you to Aaron and the rest of the team, Emma and everyone who's been in the chat. Thanks to Sal for walking us through making phone calls. I want to, before we leave, we have a couple of things. We have a video and I want to take a photo. So just be ready for that. I want everyone to get their minds wrapped around a photo. But first, we have one more storytelling video from Jeff. I'm going to say thank you to the panel and turn it back over to Emma and the folks for our video from Jeff.
My name is Jeff Miller, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with my husband, David. We're active in our Western Pennsylvania SAGE at Persat Center Group and also in a variety of other organizations. As a volunteer answering the telephone at our local LGBTQ plus community center, I heard many stories about discrimination in housing and home security, about bullying in schools and neighborhoods, about retribution in places of employment, all happening because of an individual's sexual orientation or gender expression. My own 30-year career was ended when I came out as a gay man. The desperation and sadness expressed in these personal stories was sometimes palpable, and so often the individuals felt unheard and powerless. Through my advocacy efforts on behalf of those whose stories I know and countless others hidden in the fringes of our country, I urge those empowered to be relentless in pursuit of comprehensive non-discrimination legislation, and those of us in the LGBTQ plus community at large to take up the call to advocacy until all of us are assured that who we love will not have a negative impact on our rights as citizens of our local communities, our state, and our nation.
A perfect message, a perfect.
What a good ending note.
What a perfect ending note on that is now giving me a gleaming smile. Emma, I would love to take a photo so we can also share that with our friends on social media.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the way that it's just going to work is I'm going to take a screenshot of the screen, but we'd love everybody to come onto the camera. If we can't fit everybody, since we've got a lot of you on, or if people not everybody comes on camera, I'll take 2 different photos since we've got a few pages of you, and I want to make sure that we get everybody. So we'll give like a few seconds and I'll tell you when we're going to take the picture so we can all get situated. We can all do our nice cheesy smiles and say equality on 3 or something like that. And so, yeah, if everybody's situated and turning their cameras on, I'll take a photo.
Could we also, we could do one with the panel, but also unpin people so that way we can see everyone on the screen.
Yeah, I have it so that not everyone on my screen, you're all not pinned. You're just all at the top, but I can still see everybody. But let me unspotlight everybody. That's a good point. Thank you. So, okay. Just want to make sure that we've got everybody. Okay. Last call to turn on your video. It's going to be great. We get everybody's smiling faces. Let me make sure that I don't have any notifications ruining the video either. Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Oops, sorry, my computer just got weird. Okay, just kidding. Counting down again. Okay, everybody smile. Say equality on 3 or something. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Equality. Okay, hopefully that worked. I'm gonna do it again. For some reason, it's not doing the usual flash that it took a picture. So one more time, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Okay, I got it. And then I'm just gonna go to the second page as well to get everybody else. Okay, one more time. This is the last one, I promise. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Awesome. It's kind of a lot easier to take photos over Zoom than it is to gather everybody, make sure everyone's all framed and everyone's in the shot. So I'm glad that we could do that since we did go a little bit over today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I just want to thank everyone once again. Thank you to Emma for such a seamless program tonight. Thank you to everyone who was able to join. It was so lovely to see all of your faces, and I'm asking you, I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you, please not only make calls to your senators, but also get your friends to make calls, post on social media asking for their friends to make calls. This is a community effort. And we know from the stories that have been shared tonight, we know from the data that has been shared tonight, that we are in this fight together. 75% of Floridians support non-discrimination protections for the LGBTQ community. So keep your eyes peeled for the emails that'll come with all the information you need to keep making these calls. Look at the Triangle Connection on Facebook, and I'm really excited to continue to do this work alongside every one of you. So thank you everyone for spending the evening with us. We'll see you very soon.